Hi Arthur, how are you?
Awesome, Olga. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've known each other for a long time, but you're actually with a newish company that has a cool name called Grapple. I'm sure people haven't heard, or some people haven't heard of Grapple. Can you tell us a bit about what you do and what Grapple does?
Steve Dawson's came out of accounting and everything else. I thought we've got to provide some fintech that can really help SME businesses with debtor finance and payables as well. So we've got supply chain finance and things like that. So I joined Grapple late last year, and we're out there trying to help SME businesses. So trying to do things a little bit more innovatively and trying to be a bit more intuitive, engaging with the clients, listening to them, and trying to provide some working capital out into the marketplace. So yeah.
Fantastic. I sometimes I talk about pub talk. So the guy at the pub told me this, or I heard at the pub that. And I think one of the big pub talk features is people saying, if I've got tax debt, I can't get money, or I don't have certain assets and I can't borrow, or I need more cash flow, but NAB said no. And I think that's one of the real myths, and that's sort of a space where you come in and can assist.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's so many ways that we can assist. All those things occur in business. Business is not just linear. Businesses go up and down. They have these working capital issues. They've got growth issues. They've got things that come out of the left field, industry disruptions, you name it. Look at the world at the moment. It's chaotic.
Yeah.
So who knows what's around the corner? And often, because they're not linear, they can't demonstrate, I guess, some of the fundamentals that some of the banks really want and need to be able to support them. And we're able to look beyond that. We're able to look at the underlying business and the environment, what the trajectory is like, what the owners of the business have historically done to get themselves out of pickles, where the growth sectors may be, and help them out when they don't necessarily have all the elements necessary. And we're able to look into that, whether it be tax debt. Let's face it, unfortunately, people get some bad advice, and you know it better than anybody else. And they go down that path, and then they keep digging and they keep digging and they keep digging, and before they know it, they bury their head in the sand. And then even when they come to you, they still don't do the right things, and that's where we can jump in and help them turn the corner with the right advice, the plans in place. If the fundamental business is there, then we're there to help. So we can help them with turnaround plans. We can help them with growth plans. And as you said, it doesn't really matter if the banks, need other collateral and other support, or other institutions can't support them. Often we're able to get in there and help them out.
I think the linear is a really good description. We haven't had that come up before, but I think it's a perfect way to describe so many businesses that even we see. And as a business owner myself, I know even our business. I would love for everything to go in a straight line, but like you said, even if you look at the world at the moment, nothing goes in a straight line. Things do go up and things do go down. And one of the things that I'm huge on, which because we've worked together for so long, is finding solutions. And it is for that when it's not linear and it's not up or it's not down. People often ask me again, I suppose another pub talk myth, do I just help people get out of paying their tax? But quick growth is a huge factor that we see. A lot of people have tax debt, not because they've got a bad business, but they've had huge growth. And often the money coming in doesn't match the money going out, or the speed and the timing don't match up. So what happens is that they've got huge growth, they've got a great business, a whole heap of invoices out there, but then they also have a big tax debt. And so that's obviously where we come in and can buy time with a long-term payment plan. So there's not that recovery action, but it's not a bad business. But you guys come in too when the cash coming in and the cash going out and the timing doesn't match up. I'm sure you would see that all the time in some of the solutions that you provide.
Yes, absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head. And what business owners don't obviously have the luxury of is planning all of their
Yeah.
growth all of the
Yep.
time. The growth is fundamental to most businesses, as we all know, but you can't always plan it perfectly. Sometimes you've got to take a bit of a leap of faith, and sometimes it's not well planned and not thought through. They don't understand the impact. And often when growth comes in, it's great. But the cost of growth, people don't realize that, and the inefficiencies as you're growing, and the ability to control things as you're growing. Growth is exceptionally important in business. what we're able to do is, especially when we can team up with yourselves or anyone else that's come in to help businesses, manage the changes that have happened through growth, is give them the working capital through their receivables, give them that cash flow that speeds through so they can invest in people, in machinery, in whatever they need to do in their business a lot quicker than they would otherwise while they're waiting for invoices to be paid. We're also able to help them with their supplier payments. And the other thing we try and do is partner up like we have with yourself and other people who understand these fundamentals in business so that they can get all the sort of ingredients. There might be equipment finance, it might be some term debt that needs to be restructured, it might be a whole heap of things, some other advice to help them in their business so that they can then turn that growth into success and profitability. That's what it's all about. And then they can pay back, if they've got ATO arrears and the debts and everything else, and make their business more efficient, therefore driving profitability and through the business being able to perform better.
Yeah, absolutely. I often talk about it's a number of pieces of a puzzle to a solution. So people might come to us with 400,000 of tax debt. They can't pay that in one hit. But if you put all the different pieces together, and same as you, I'm a big believer in specialists all working together to help. So if we get them on a 3-year payment plan, and then you get them cash flow, some finance coming in, that then they're not waiting every month for an invoice to be paid, but they've got funding through you, then they can meet their payment plan every month. They know that that money's coming in. They've got the solution from you. They're building their business. They've still got great clients. They're just the money coming in from the client and the money coming in from the invoice wasn't matching what they had to pay the ATO, but they're protected. They're in the payment plan with that solution, and then they've got cash flow coming in from you and the solution coming in there. I think a change that's coming up that's going to hit in July that we're all just sort of starting to talk about is Payday Super. And that's going to mean that instead of super being paid quarterly, people are going to have to pay, or companies, sorry, are going to have to pay their super at the same time they pay wages. So if you pay wages weekly or you pay wages fortnightly, you're going to have to pay super at the same time. And I think that's going to put extra cash flow pressure on a lot of businesses that are banking on, say, 90-day invoices being paid, and they were waiting for that invoice to come in.
Absolutely. And the ATO, as you say, are getting tired with a lot of things. Now with Payday Super, it's only going to put more and more pressure on businesses in the short term. If they plan well, they talk to us and people like yourselves, they can plan for all this, and it will actually make their businesses better. Businesses that have those disciplines in place seem to be better businesses because they keep on top of it and they manage it. It's all about systems of I watched a great documentary just the other day, and it was about Toyota success. They're not fancy, they're not glam, they're not going out putting rockets into space, but they do all the fundamentals really well all the time. And everything's really aligned to, they're a massive company, as we all know, but everything's about just-in-time management. Everything's about efficiency. Everything's about having a place. Everything's about making sure that their cash flow is aligned with their business operation, and they're huge. So if they need to do that, it just shows that everybody needs to do that. I think with things like Payday Super and these other disciplines that are being forced on businesses, operators are no longer going to have that easy option to say, I'll pay that tomorrow or the day after. They're going to be forced into it. So they're going to have to think about their cash flow more and more and more. They're going to have to get into arrangements that they can sustain more and more and more. And therefore, they're going to have to make sure that their cash flow aligns with when they have to pay for things. So they're going to have to make sure that their payments in, or so their collection activity has to be really good, or they're going to have funding facilities in place to ensure that they can carry that time between getting paid, to ensure that they can pay the things like the ATO and things like Payday Super, but also keep payments up to their suppliers because they're all going to be under pressure.
Yeah.
They need to get their collections in as well. So that whole economy of business is going to have to become more sustainable, more efficient in order to meet these obligations. I think as a result, we're also going to see a bit of a weeding out of really bad performers. But in the meantime, really good businesses, as you say, that just need that working capital, need that ability to sort of sort out their tax debt, sort out their cash flow so the alignment is a lot closer. we're going to be there for them as you are, and they're going to be able to thrive. And these disciplines are only going to make their businesses far better in the future.
I think the days and the ATO have got a lot of press releases, and they've said this a lot. The days of treating the ATO like the easy, cheap small business bank are gone. I think everyone just needs to completely put that in the past. That's gone, and people do need the reality of different finance options. I don't have a frog with me today, but I'm wearing green. I also always talk about eating the frog, and I just think exactly like what you were saying. It's about planning. You can't put these difficult things off anymore. You've got to face them head on. And by facing them head on and dealing with the debt and not waiting to get those nasty letters from the ATO, or looking and sourcing different funding now and different options now, rather than hoping that they can just build up an ATO balance and nothing will happen. Or I know people sometimes say to me, oh yeah, but it's expensive to get different funding. But the reality is the ATO, if you're not in a payment plan and you're not paying them, that the enforcement action is way more expensive. So if there's a garnishee that takes money out of your bank account, or a director penalty notice, or a wind up, or a bankruptcy, they have a huge detrimental effect. So when you talk about finance being expensive, I think if you weigh those two things up, finance is just going to be a cost of doing business as we move forward with different regimes and with different timing and what people are going to need to make sure they're protected from this recovery action.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head again with, cost of doing business. Either way, there's a cost of doing business. You've got to either have your own capital to put into the business, and you've got to ask yourself, what's the return on that? So if you had $5 million in the bank account, you put that into your business, are you going to want zero return on it? No, you'd want a return on that. So the flip side is not everyone's got that money and that working capital sitting there, so they've got to use a source. Now, the reality is the cost of funding can vary depending on risk, depending on business profile, etc. But the type of funding is always linked to the collateral that you have in place, and the assets that you've got in your business or personally, and that's why you have an adjustment. But if you look at the rates that people can get from our segment in the industry, they're not too far when you compare them to unsecured finance lines from our friends in banking, and they still won't say yes necessarily. I mean, they have a real good place, a very important place in the whole financial services industry as well, as do we, and we're trying to fill that hole, and we're really trying to work hard and closely with small to medium enterprise businesses so we can plug in those holes when everyone else just can't get around it for whatever reason that may be. And the other thing that's important to note is we really try and work with the business to understand them in detail, because you can't really work with a business unless you really drill down and understand what they're going through, what their future plans are. Does it make sense? Are they burying their head in the sand, and are they just digging a bigger hole? In most cases, there's always a solution, and the drive with the support of the right financing tools, and the adjustments needed to be made in the businesses, I guess, through some of the forced requirements of the ATO or Payday Super, get people to refocus their energies in the right places for their business to be successful. And I guess stop them from being a little bit too entrepreneurial all the time, because that's often the case. Every business owner, and with God bless them, without this attitude, they just wouldn't exist. They wouldn't keep going. But because of that enthusiasm, because of that drive, and because of the belief in their businesses, always believe it'll be okay. But sometimes we can step in there and help guide that as well through the professional advice, stopping the bleeding, putting the resources in place so that they can get the cash flow necessary. And if they can direct it in the right places in their business, obviously it'll be a better outcome for them and everybody involved, and they can get back on top of things.
Do you have a quick pub talk myth that you've heard people say over and over again when you go out and you see a business and you meet a business, they've got tax debt, they're sort of starting to talk to us, they need to go on a payment plan, but there's not quite enough cash coming in a month? I'm sure you hear the words, I wish I'd met you a year ago, or I wish I knew about you, or what sort of, do you have a top myth that comes up all the time?
And there's a bit of a stigma sometimes attached to it to say that, this is the lending of last resort. I guess, which is very frustrating because it's not. I mean, receivables finance is used by big and small businesses. I mean, it's heavily utilised by large corporates in different forms, and people don't realise how common it is. And that's one of the myths that, all of a sudden, if you go down this path, the lenders of last resort, and it's going to cost a fortune, and that's not necessarily the case. Quite
And
often,
it's plugging a gap. It's fixing that cash flow so that you can make the monthly repayments where you need to, and you're not waiting on that debtor to pay all the time.
correct. And then if you're chasing that debtor all the time, you're also straining your relationships. Especially if you've got terms and arrangements in place and you've got to call them all the time. You want to avoid that too by having the right financing package in place, by having the right advisors in place, by having the right strategies in place, by dealing with things head on, as you said earlier. Not kicking the can down the road and saying you can use the ATO. I mean, that you're right. That's a thing of the past. If people don't have the facilities in place and have the strategies in place that will help them fund these, that just won't continue to happen. And the ATO has made it very clear in the articles that they're publishing and the actions that they're taking. If people are not addressing them, I saw a couple of people that just buried their head. They just thought, no, they'll be right. And they get the garnishee orders, and they get the director penalty notices, and it's far more expensive in the long run. It costs them so much more.
When we're dealing with a client, and the outcomes that we're able to get them and the length of the payment plan, you're looking at a 3-year payment plan when there's no recovery action, and the amount they need to pay per month when there's no recovery action. And each time there's another level. So we can still help when there's a director penalty notice, but it's harder. And when there's a statutory demand or when there's bankruptcy. So each level of recovery action, it gets harder and harder, and that's actually more and more expensive because they need different amounts to give to the ATO. They're higher amounts. They're often shorter periods, whereas if they dealt with it earlier and got, again, I'm going to use pieces of the puzzle. I think there's not one size fits all, and there's certainly not one solution anymore with the current climate, the way we run businesses, the things that happen every day. Things pop up, things change, and it is really about using a team of specialists to get that full picture and help the business at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think people, the sooner they act on anything, whether it be in business or in life, the sooner you address things head on and actually put a plan in place and take on the responsibility of whether it be financing, whether it be tackling the ATO debt, making the adjustments in business. I mean, business, it's so important, as you said, to get that specialist advice and know-how and dealing with it early on. The earlier you do it, the better it is for everybody, because then you've hit it while it's small. I mean, dealing with smaller problems is a lot easier than dealing with them when they've grown legs and become a far bigger, as you said. By the time they go down the path and you've got all those additional statutory demands, garnishees and director penalty notices, the problem is so big that it just, you really have to grind to get out of it. It's not impossible, as you said, but it is so much harder. And why do that when you can focus your energies on building your business and growing your business and having the resources to do that efficiently and effectively, and keeping everything, under control, having those things, in line and focusing on all your energies on actually growing the business in the right way.
Thank you so much for that information and those insights, Arthur. I think the key takeaways are that don't be scared to have a conversation, that there are solutions out there that can really, as you said, plug the hole, help cash flow. It doesn't mean the business is failing. It's often the opposite, that the business is growing and doing really well. And as you said, just like Toyota, which is one of the car manufacturers, not that I know a lot about cars, that's still going strong. People need to plan. They need to use the right specialists. Eat the frog. Don't bury your head in the sand, and use all the tools to complete that picture of the puzzle for help.
Yeah, absolutely. And doing things like actually engaging and getting the right advice from a number of places and making the right decisions based on the information you have, is going to be far better than actually just kicking the can down the road by absolutely just making decisions without all the right advice from the professionals that actually know what they're actually doing that can help your business.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thanks, Arthur.
Thanks, Olga.